So with that out of the way, I guess we should sort of head into the primary story, which is what everyone's been asking about. Long before the show even started, the night I posted this, I was watching
Yeah.
as like 26, 25 people were still hanging around. It's like the show's in 3 days. Why are you hanging around like talking 5 hours after everything? Okay,
A lot of
so
people are angry at things that we haven't said.
yeah,
It's
that's
very interesting to watch. Hello, anyone who's come back from that whole thing. Hello, people who hate us. It's nice to have you here. Uh, Hopefully,
yes.
you'll give us a chance to explain ourselves. And
It's been quite amazing to watch people criticizing a position we haven't even shared yet. So yes, of course, all of this centers around the 12th of November, which is when PhilosophyTube tweeted out a joke which suggested that the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, is transgender. The post was about the transition of power between Trump and Biden. And Ollie tweeted out, what was it? I get the actual tweet. The tweet. I should note, all of our sources and links and everything is put in a little Google document, which can be found at the bottom of the stream description, in case you want to look at any of these things as we go through. Ollie tweeted out, "That's a surprise. Best of luck to the president in her transition." Now, this garnered Ollie a lot of criticism, especially since this is not Ollie's first run-in with being insensitive to the trans community. Those of you in the know will remember that last year, Ollie had a previous run-in with Transphobia, having tweeted out the joke, "I'm in this and it's really good, and even though she'll be the cancellation of me someday, I stan." End quote. This is when Natalie posted her opulence video, which contained the transphobic domestic abuser Buck Angel. And a lot of people had spoken about the fact that said inclusion was very harmful, was very hurtful. Buck Angel is not only embiphobic, he outed a trans woman, Alana Wachowski, all as part of active domestic abuse against his ex-wife. They'd been divorced for 3 years at the time. He just waited for the opportune moment. This is not a act of passion or whatever that shit is. He waited, calculated 3 years, until he could hurt both his ex-wife and her new partner as much as possible. So, people were getting critical of Natalie when that happened. Ollie came out with this tweet, effectively jabbing at the people who explained how Buck Angel's inclusion hurt them, and subsequently he got his ass handed to him over that. This is not Ollie's first time in the firing line. So, much like last time, a lot of people came forward and explained why the joke he made was harmful, and there was no singular reason that the joke Ollie made was harmful. There are a plethora of reasons being made throughout the chat and in response to everything, so yes, it's just something to keep in mind. Anyone who says this is the reason that people are upset and points to one singular reason is being highly reductionist, and really you should always be critical and skeptical, but it should definitely increase that. So yes, I'm just coming on, just having a look at the notes. Oh, right, I'm looking at the wrong... I've got 2 sets of notes for this, and I was looking at the wrong one. Okay, so starting with the more general issue. This joke is the transphobe is really trans, which is really just an updated version of the homophobe is really gay. Donald Trump put through various policies that hurt the trans community. It was constantly living under fear under the Trump administration. This is someone who has caused the trans community a lot of harm. And just in the same way that the homophobe is really gay, this sort of criticism carries with it a lot of issues. For one, when you're mocking someone under the premise that they are gay or that they are trans, you may not be intending it this way, but you are equating that with the negative, that aspect of them, so being trans or gay. Like, just at a base level, there's that issue. You cannot make the transphobe is really trans or the homophobe is really gay without suggesting that there was something wrong or shameful about being trans or being gay. You just can't separate that, sadly. Going back to the whole comparison to the homophobe is really gay, this thing can also start to build itself in ways that actively dismiss criticism of homophobia, and in this case, transphobia. A famous example of the homophobe is really gay joke being taken and made serious is Omar Mateen, which some of you might remember as the Pulse nightclub shooter. After the whole shooting, it came out, and there was lots of speculation, that they could be a closeted gay, who went out there and killed a bunch of people, in spite of there being zero evidence. There was no evidence at the time that a lot of papers began reporting on this, and when the FBI checked through all their hard drives, all their communications, they found zero evidence that supported them being gay. So why is this a big issue? What's the harm that this caused? Well, for a start, it gives society a free pass. It reduces the issue of transphobia and homophobia to a personal weakness rather than a systemic prejudice. This effectively washes the hands of allo-cishet people and society of their homophobia and transphobia when they are more than capable and far more likely to be the ones inflicting harm. You don't have to be trans to be transphobic. You don't have to be gay to be homophobic, It also stigmatizes being in the closet as being the cause of mass murderers in the case of people like Omar Mateen. With Trump, it's more the systemic violence that he inflicted upon the trans community. And there is already a narrative of cowardice that surrounds being in the closet. There are people who have very strong opinions that, hey, if you're in the closet, you're not standing up, you're not doing your bit, and that's kind of a betrayal of everything. So there's that issue. We also have the issue with, again, it's flung out there as an insult to the person, which, intent aside, marks being gay or trans as something to be ashamed of. That's where the punch is coming from. When this joke is being made, Ollie wasn't actually supporting Trump. He was trying to make a joke at Trump's expense, and the expense came at the association with being trans. And yes, you can say that, it's only a negative association in the eyes of Trump's viewers and followers and stuff, but that does not matter. You're still creating that negative association, which you just should not do. So,
speaking of negative associations, there are two things that really jump out at me about this, the transphobe is really trans thing. And the first one is it's really horrible to associate someone with a person who has hurt them for that characteristic. Associating trans people, saying you're the same as someone who has hurt you specifically for being trans is just a really horrible thing to do. But also, it kind of implies, when you say the transphobe is really trans, it implies that trans people are bringing this harm on ourselves, which it
gives society the free pass, like mentioned earlier. It washes allo-cishet society's hands of its homophobia and transphobia. It gives it a free pass, sort of. Because literally, if you can respond, well, the only reason they're bigoted is because they are gay or they are trans, that removes focus away from the societal prejudice that exists. And all of this makes circles in which cis people use such jokes unwelcoming to many trans people. It effectively shuts them out of those circles. A lot of people in this were genuinely hurt by what Ollie said. And a lot of them were talking about how they just don't feel comfortable around Ollie anymore. And people can say, hurt feelings aren't harm. Well, yes, but being shut out of circles that are supposed to be supportive, that have promoted themselves as being supportive, that have made money off of trying to be supportive, to be shut out of those circles, that is harm. You know, that's making sure that they don't have a voice, they don't have the ability to like push the narrative in a positive direction. It's just removing them. Or if they decide to stay, it's putting a constant tax on their mental health. And now that they have to be on alert for the fact that someone might make the same joke, someone might make the same thing, and if they criticize it, you know, it's all going to blow up. We will be coming back to the response, because as people have already noted in the chat, yes, in a large part, that is worse than the actual joke. But one point I want to make specifically here is this isn't so much related to the whole homophobe is really gay thing. This is a specific thing that links to the greater context of trans people, specifically trans women, and that's in how Trump is a known predator. He's a known sexual predator, and whether Ollie likes it or not, this joke is associating a sexual predator with trans women in the social context of trans women as a demographic have been presented as predatory. We have been presented as these people breaking into bathrooms to rape women and children, to grab them by the pussy, as Trump would say. And this is far worse. This one aspect alone, forgetting all of like the stuff I've listed just now, this one aspect alone makes this joke worse than the attack helicopter joke. You know, the attack helicopter joke is just dismissal, right? That's just flat out dismissal. Part of me knows I always fucking exist, so like, yeah, it hurts. But this right here is reinforcing stereotypes used to justify transphobic violence. And that is physical violence, psychological violence, and legal violence. You know, you can't just ignore that greater context. Now, people will say, it's just one joke. It's just one person making one joke. But by making this joke, Ollie is normalizing it, greenlighting it as an okay joke for other cis people to make, effectively multiplying that, that feeling of not being welcome that many trans people felt as a result of this. And I'm saying many trans people, not all trans people, because every trans experience is different, everyone responds differently to these things, but it is undeniable, looking at the evidence beneath his joke, that there were a significant number of trans people who were genuinely hurt and felt unwelcome because of this tweet. Now, one common sort of retort I've seen is, as mentioned earlier, as I said, like, not every trans person takes issue with it. Some people like to point out, well, this trans person said it was okay. And there's this issue here that people seem to believe that every trans person has to take issue with something for it to be classed as transphobic. And that's just not the case. Nor do you need intent to cause harm, only intent to cause action for it to be violence. I should also be clear on that. So yes, that happens, and people are like explaining exactly. Many of these points are explained in that post as to why this is a problem. There were many people who were saying, Ollie, I think you're a great ally, but this isn't it. You know, there were people really trying to help Ollie understand things, and the joke is still up there. We will come back to that towards the end. But as things moved along, of course, you get the reaction to the reaction. And this is when Vosh and other people start coming in.